as a technician, you look at it and you go, wow, that's amazing engineering. Some of the stuff that's done is just, take your hat off. 10 years ago, you get a set of spotlights and a roof rack. That was your vehicle modified. Now it's just gone, next level ballistic. It's endless in terms of, if you've got some creative flair, they could do anything on a vehicle. I'm definitely a supporter of human labour, but robots don't take sickies. Robots are consistent. He's driving down the road and it's upside down. It's like, why? But wow. Absolutely nut and bolt restorations, interiors that were just mind blowing. The skill and the workmanship on these vehicles.
Okay, so Marcello, thanks so much for being on the show. So you're the director of the MTA Institute. You've gone to the SEMA Show in Las Vegas this year. You obviously it's a great event for you to go to. You've been in the industry for so long. But this was not just a case of you wanted to go along to have a look at some stuff. This is a professional development thing for you. Can you explain what the background is there?
It is, John. So, in automotive, there's probably two, mecca events, so there's Auto Mechanica in Germany and then you've got SEMA in the US. So anyone who's anyone in the automotive industry knows that SEMA is the place to be. In terms if you're a car lover and in terms of, the purpose of my involvement was really to understand the industry, what industry is like on the other side of the planet, in terms to gauge the potential opportunities for us to look at what we do here in Queensland, Australia, and maybe implement or understand where the market's going, because the US market's probably a little bit more advanced in terms of the tech and the vehicles they're getting. So it was an opportunity for me to have a look at maybe emerging technology. So how this came about was a few years ago. I was exposed to the Queensland Overseas Foundation. So basically what they do is really supporting young people. This is not the program I'm in. This is definitely not the young piece. But what they do is they support young people when they're finishing their apprenticeship. They go overseas, get some skills and bring them back to Australia. That's one of the parts of the Queensland Overseas Foundation. The other part is to professional development for educators. So when the opportunity arose, I put in an application because I knew that I could glean some intelligence from going to the US or Auto Mechanica, in this case SEMA, and have a look at what their industry does, the service repair industry, the modification, and also their apprenticeship system or the equivalents of. So it was a professional development opportunity for me, and they funded they've subsidised some of the trip, which is very, very generous.
Yeah, okay. So a learning experience as well as a thrill to be part of.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to lie. It is very cool because I do like cars. So it was, two birds with one stone. It was, I was a kid in a candy store, to be honest. Lots of shiny things, lots of, very, very cool things. But I really had an objective. I really wanted to see, take a deep dive into their industry and understand what they do, how they do it, and potentially what repercussions or what we'll be able to implement in terms of our industry and our training here in Queensland.
Yeah. Okay. So so we all know that the aftermarket sector is just enormous in the States.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Actually, probably difficult for us to get a sense of how big it really is. So obviously, going to SEMA, you get an idea of how enormous it is, but. What stood out for you?
So, if you look at our market, and I'm talking automotive industry, we've got a fairly strong service and repair sector. So basically what that means is that, we've got skilling, we've got a strong industry, we've got people that can actually support and service these vehicles. Our modification sector is starting to grow. So, if you're lucky enough to get on the Fraser Island or, Bribery on a weekend, you'll see the 4-wheel drives over there, and the amount of modifications in the last 5 years are second to none. 10 years ago, you get a set of spotlights and a roof rack. That was your vehicle modified. Now it's just gone, next level ballistic. So in terms of what our market, how that's matured and progressed fairly quickly, the US has been like that forever, but their mods are absolutely serious mods, and hopefully I'll be able to share some photos or some images. So, their modifications are, in terms of suspension, is I'm not a tall guy, but I was dwarfed by some of the wheel assemblies and chassis, and so when I was looking up at headlights, I knew there was some serious mods, and that's not street stuff, but in terms of their aftermarket, it is huge, it is massive, and it's quite esteemed. So our industry sort of is a bit of a dirty trade. They still refer to it as a dirty trade, whereas in the US, and particularly Las Vegas with all the custom mods, etc., it's actually, if you're a fabricator, or if you can, have the skills to actually, repair these vehicles and modify these vehicles, you're quite esteemed. It's looked at as a very cool trade in terms of having those skills and ability to modify vehicles.
So, was there any sort of sector within that within the under the aftermarket umbrella that you sort of went, oh wow, this is not registering so much in Australia, but here it's obviously a big deal.
Absolutely. So, wraps. So, we've probably heard of wraps in terms of, signage for businesses, like a van. You wrap a van, put some logos and branding. But it's actually become the general. So the mum and dads now can wrap their vehicles. So the first thing is you can just wrap a new vehicle for protection. So effectively, put like a clear coat on. But that's the really entry level. That's just a paint protection product. But next level is, I see a graphic. I see something I like. They can basically, design it, print it, and apply it to your vehicle. So it's endless in terms of, if you've got some creative flair, they could do anything on a vehicle. So, and what was interesting is an absolutely brand new sector was the tools and equipment to actually apply these wraps. I thought it was a credit card and some soapy water, mate, to be honest, and maybe get the hairdryer out. And obviously, no, it's better than more deeper than that. But there was walls and walls of different tools and application, and to apply this is a trade in itself now. So these wraps. And the other thing is, it's not just one supplier. We've got, 3 or 4 really big, if I was to sort of name a couple, there's people like Avery, there's people like, I'm trying to think of some of the suppliers, but the 3M provide coatings. There was hundreds and hundreds of different suppliers and different coating suppliers. So it's a massive industry. In fact, it blew my mind, the tools, equipment, and the amount of vehicles that were wrapped over there. And it's just it's not just your high-end stuff or your marketing. It's just your mum and dad just wrapping cars. So it's quite interesting. And it gives a lot of flair. You look at, you walk down the street and, it might be just a Vegas thing, but there was a lot to see, and it was like, what the hell? What colour is that? And what's that design? And it was very cool.
Is that something that you think will filter over here at some point?
I think so. So I think as we get the suppliers and the skills come across and the demand for it, absolutely, I think we'll see more and more of it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's we talked about car wraps there, but I suppose a big part of SEMA, a big part of any of these sort of major exhibitions and shows these days is the emerging technology.
Yep.
So wraps is kind of an established technology, but it's growing. Emerging technologies now. So I guess we're talking, I don't know, AI, robotics, things like that. Any sort of things that you saw there that may filter down again to Australia at some point, or anything that stood out?
Sure. So I absolutely saw some tech around robotics. So, as you get more investors and more companies investing in robotics, certainly the applications start to flow in automotive. And one of the simple ones was, a couple of robotic arms in a paint booth where you'd position the vehicle and it would actually spray paint the car. So In terms of the cost effectiveness right now, I don't think so, because obviously it's quite expensive. But more and more as time evolves and we get more and more players in the market, we'll see some of this automation and robotics. One of the other ones I saw was the fabrication in terms of welding, so robotic welding. Very consistent, absolutely perfect outcome. No, shakes with after a couple of coffees. These robots were just absolutely perfect. So once they're programmed, certainly, they're not mistake free, but they're pretty close. So robotics is definitely something we're seeing more and more of in a bit of fabrication, and in terms of the things that you could control and have a system for, you can actually introduce a robotic. So we're seeing a little bit of that. Never replace obviously humans, but there's some tasks, and it's probably those really annoying, laborious tasks that the robots can just do consistently time and time again. And that way, our technicians and our apprentices can actually do those more technical and more sophisticated things that take some, human interaction, that tactileness and feel and all the sensors we use, rather than a robot. You just program it, will just do what's programmed, and that's it. It can't think around corners, and it doesn't, if something goes wrong, it's just going to keep going. Whereas humans are able to obviously adapt. So there's probably a place for it. I don't think it's going to replace any in terms of jobs. I think it'll enhance what we do, and it'll probably take the really laborious and the boring work out of it, and we can maybe implement some robotics, particularly the collision and the fabrication side of things.
Yeah. So you could arguably have a booth with a couple of these robots in and just keep it going 24 hours a day.
Pretty much.
Just churn out through the work, right?
Yeah. And, I'm definitely a supporter of human labour, but robots don't take sickies. Robots are consistent. All those things about, that. However, they need to be programmed. They need to be set up right. And
Sure.
it takes a lot of front end work to actually implement something that's going to be efficient. But you're absolutely right. Conveyors and robotics and things that are just repetitive. And like I said before, they don't think around corners. So everything's got to be perfect for it to work. So if you can, if you think about a production line, manufacturing in a motor vehicle, it's all robotic, and it's all just consistent, same. So if you get a workflow that was that way, absolutely, you will see more and more robotics.
Do you get a sense when you're seeing this stuff of whether it's kind of like pie in the sky ideas, or it's definitely on its way, or is it already in use in some form in the States? Or?
Yeah, there's always the champions and those leaders that will start, but it's an expensive undertaking. So they're doing R&D, so they're copying a hit in terms of the research and development. But the benefit of that is, in 2, 5, 10 years time, they've done the groundwork and they've done that. So I think it's a reality in some areas, and some places it's not. If you think about vehicle servicing, as in motor mechanics, there's a lot of movement, a lot of different things. You can't really be robotic around some of these repairs, but there's some you can absolutely just use robotics or engineering to actually do the work.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. So what about the electrification of the industry? I mean, we obviously we talk a great deal about it here, and sales of EVs appear to be ever growing here. So it's a big deal, and an expanding sector. Do you get a sense of what the market is like over there, and how it's viewed, and how it's growing, and infrastructure and things like that? Was that a part of the show?
It was. So interestingly, in Australia, EVs, there's a lot of hype around them. We're starting to get different variety of models. We're starting to get some infrastructure. In the US, obviously Tesla, a massive EV manufacturer. Interesting, Tesla themselves don't think they're a mobility company. They're around transitioning the world to sustainable energy, right? So that's their mantra, even though there was a lot of Teslas in Las Vegas. In fact, in the actual SEMA, the convention center, it's quite large. I'm talking 20 football fields, so it's quite large. But what they do is to move people around. They've got like a underground infrastructure, and they had Teslas in this infrastructure, and it was like a tube system. So you see these Teslas appearing from out of the ground. And I thought, oh, what's going on here? But it's actually the convention center ferrying people around because it's quite large. So you jump in the Tesla, you go underground, and it's a weirder sensation because it's in a tube, and the vehicle fits in there snugly, and it's white, and then the driver just sort of accelerates, and the EV's got those G forces, and then all of a sudden these lights, LED lights, and it's a bit psychedelic, and it's like, it was a bit of a rush, and then you come out the other side, and we're back on Earth. It was a bit of a spin out, but obviously that's not what we're talking about in terms of EVs, but it was an experience in terms of driving or being a passenger in the Tesla. But their market is definitely stabilised, so they see EVs as sort of normal now. So they've got their use application, so they know that their urban use, they love their trucks, their diesels, and their big utes, etc. So it's sort of settled that the urban use will run around the EV. When we're going out in the desert or wherever you are in the US, they check their big trucks and diesels. So. There was an area where they were doing the modifications and certainly converting normal vehicles into EVs. It was more sophisticated than ours. So in Australia, I think what we're doing a lot of times is that people will buy a wreck, for example, and take a battery pack out and a motor out, and they'll retrofit it into something else. So, but these guys actually got off the shelf kits with quite sophisticated battery technology, mounting systems. So you can sort of go, I need an EV kit for example, an MX-5 or a Miata, and you go in and you'll get the kit, and it'll be basically almost bolt-in because all the R&D's been done. So it's a little bit more sophisticated for the conversion market, and the conversions are really good, so really slick. If you look at the quality of work, it's almost OEM standard, and not. I don't want to be rude about some of the conversions I've seen, but you pop a bonnet, and there's a bit of spaghetti. Wiring everywhere. It's like, I'm not sure if that's so safe, but that's more of a DIY market. But there's definitely a fairly robust market for conversions, and there was conversions for all types of vehicles. There was like a Ferrari. There was different, Volkswagens and MX-5s, and they're pretty much converting. Have kits for a lot of different vehicles. So it's quite.
So actually, so you actually mean that like there's almost like off the shelf kits. You go, so if you have an MX-5, you go, I want to make it electric. You can go to a store and buy the kit, and away.
It's a bit more boutique, but yes. It'll be like, hey, these are the mounts. So you buy this motor, it'll have these for you just drop in. So they've done all the fabrication, and they've done all the design, so it does drop in. So they absolutely have off the shelf, but it's a little bit of a boutique market, but it's getting bigger and bigger. But yeah, quite the workmanship and the quality of the conversions are second to none. So they're exceptional.
I mean, so the electrification of the industry that relies on the infrastructure. I mean, I know people can charge at home, and I guess a lot of people will do that. So, but the highway and public infrastructure for charging is it's important stuff. So, and I know we're only talking about Las Vegas, but did you get a sense of that infrastructure being a big deal over there?
I think,
as well as it is.
Yeah, I think it's probably like I had my blinkers on a little bit because I was in Las Vegas, but I did get out of Las Vegas a little bit into Arizona and Nevada, etc. But Tesla had a massive solar farm, like epic proportion, and then not only that, they had all their power walls, all their batteries, battery storage, and then right out near Vegas is the Hoover Dam, so you got the hydroelectric. So they're actually, the renewable side of things is quite strong, and it did service Arizona, Nevada, and I think a bit of other states. So they're quite strong in their renewables in terms of the solar farm. They're able to store in the Tesla batteries and obviously the hydroelectric. So Las Vegas was fine, but I can't talk for some of the other states. But yeah, definitely they've been round and interesting. In terms of EVs, there were plenty of Teslas. There were plenty of Toyotas, as in hybrids. I didn't see a lot of, if you think about Korean EVs, they're quite strong in Australia, and also the Chinese EVs. Maybe it might be just, their policy settings around importations, but I didn't see too many other EVs, except I did see the Rivian, which is, high end. There was the Ford Lightning, I think is like an EV. So it's very US based EV market. So they're supporting their local manufacturing to a certain extent.
Yeah, right. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Well, let's move on to training.
Yep.
Training, again, most of these expos and shows have some focus on the training. In terms of apprenticeship training, which of course is what you're deeply involved in, did you get a sense of the difference between how we deliver or our apprenticeship setup compared to the States, and what were your feelings about that?
Yeah, I actually like the US model. What I mean by that is, if you think about our apprenticeship system, we're like GPs, general practitioners for automotive. So we'll do a little bit of everything. So we'll do a little bit of servicing. We'll do a lot of servicing. Then we'll do brakes. We'll do a bit of steering, a bit of suspension, a bit of transmission, drive lines, blah, blah, blah. So as an apprentice, you get some exposure to all of those areas. Whereas in the US, they'll start off and you'll be like a service technician or a lube technician, and that's what you'll do, right? You'll study around that. You'll get your accreditation about you're a lube technician, right? That's entry level. Then what you do is you stack your skills. So you might go, you know what, I really like drive lines or suspension. So you'll go in and plug in your suspension training. So then you'll be a suspension specialist technician or a driveline technician. So they specialize a bit more than what we do, and they do become very, very good in their area. So they have got specializations. Well, some of the old school techs and mechanics are your GPs, that because they've done it for so long, they're able to sort of have skills and knowledge. But in terms of an apprenticeship, they start with the entry level lube and servicing, and then they just stack different, and you can keep going. It's keep on stacking skills, and but I suppose the trick with the learning is practice, because you can learn something, but if you don't practice it, so that's why they'll end up in a specialization, steering suspension, and they train in that area and they keep on working in that area, so they do become very proficient and they are the experts in that area. And then you've got the shop down the road, which might specialize in tires and brakes, whatever that might look like, or electronics or EVs, for example, as well. So they do stack their skills rather than having a GP model like we do.
So does any of what you saw any of what you gleaned about their apprenticeship training, is any of that transferable or should be transferable to what we do here?
I think I like that notion of stacking skills. So rather than doing a GP, like an apprentice does a little bit of everything, and potentially doesn't get that exposure, you tend to lose that. So I do like that stacking approach, and building upon. So, and the other thing is, we do, our nominal term is a 4-year apprenticeship. So what do we do after that? It's up to the individual to go, I want to do some additional training around electric vehicles or, ADAS or whatever you might want to do. Whereas those guys, you can just keep on stacking. So there's no I'm finished after 4 years. I'm a tradesperson. They keep on stacking. So in terms of our industry, it's really hard to change the apprenticeship system. But I think what we can look at is, hey, do your GP, your normal apprenticeship, and then go do some more post-trade training and keep on stacking, because as you know, industry is moving very, very quickly, so you can't stop. So you've got to keep on training. So stacking these specializations on top of your apprenticeship is definitely something that I reckon we could do here in Australia.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, back to the fun of the SEMA Show. The SEMA Show is for industry only. It's not sort of open to the public, but that does not mean it's just about new products, bit of education, all that sort of stuff. As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's plenty of fun stuff going on.
Absolutely.
Right? So people are showing off their modified cars, the crews, all that sort of stuff. I can, in my mind's eye, and from what I've seen online, these are some of the most incredible machines that
They are.
ever seen a tarmac surface. Well,
You're absolutely spot on. So when you can get a fairly high end machine like a McLaren or Lamborghini and Ferrari, and then pimp them, that's an indication of how much or how evolved their modification sort of area is. But the full drive scene, the attention to detail and the fabrication, the paint jobs is just like, wow. They absolutely spend a lot of time and effort and highly skilled technicians to actually produce these vehicles. Some of them that resonate, like a little Beetle with 44-inch tires. So effectively, it had 4 tires on it, and one tire was probably taller than the vehicle itself. So, but it was just perfectly engineered. Crazy to look at. Some guy put twin V8s in a ute. So there was like a cab and then twin V8s, and then they fabricated some way to link those 2 motors together so they can drive the wheels. So that was a piece of engineering. Another guy built an upside down car, right? So he's turned this car upside down, then he's somehow been able to convert it. So he's driving down the road and it's upside down. It's like, why? But wow, it's a bit of both. It's like, why? But wow. When I took some photos and videos, it was like, I didn't know if it was just a Vegas thing, only in Vegas. So I think that upside down car it's a Vegas thing, right? I don't think it's a normal industry thing. But yeah, the other stuff was just phenomenal, like high end builds, late model cars, but even the old school restoration. So there was the whole of America, they want to show their cars once a year at SEMA. So they enter these comps around the car shows. So they do these builds, and some of them were just phenomenal. Some of you have to have a look at images, but the attention to detail on these builds were just phenomenal. Absolutely nut and bolt restorations, interiors that were just mind blowing. The skill and the workmanship on these vehicles. Yeah.
So, if you could sort of sum up a trip to the SEMA show, obviously not a once in a lifetime thing, but I mean something that everyone in the industry should try and get to, I imagine, just to glean what's going on in one of the biggest markets in the world. Right?
It is absolutely, and car enthusiasts or not, it is an absolute spectacle, because even the sound systems, like if you've ever YouTube clipped a subwoofer where people's hair just. The sound systems, the wheels and tire, everything's it's a spectacle. But, as a technician, you look at it and you go, wow, that's amazing engineering. Some of the stuff that's done is just, take your hat off. As a car enthusiast, it's just like a lot of shiny stuff. So, be prepared to either spend, you can spend 4 days on there and still not see everything. And even if you're not a car person, it's still pretty spectacular. Walk in the street. So at the end of the 4 days, they actually parade out, all the vehicles parade out. It ends up being on the strip there, and so the people in Las Vegas, it's just huge crowds. But if you're a car lover or not, it's just an absolute spectacle. It's very cool.
Fantastic. Right. Well, thank you very much for all that breakdown of your visit. I've just got a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
I throw it to every guest on the show. Yep. As a car guy, firstly, what car do you drive? Which one of the
that's right. So I do have 2002 HSV GDO. So it's a devil yellow. It's a modern sort of classic. It's cool. My dad had a Monaro when I was a kid, so it's one of those things when you grow up. My dad followed Holden, I follow Holden, so I do have a Holden Monaro, and I've got a couple of old Commodores.
Nice.
So VHSLE, so old school two-tone, big, plush, fluffy interior, very, very retro stuff. And my favourite car is I've got a little Renault Megane, a Cup Sprint thing, turbo, 2 litre, such a driver's car. So, and it's a manual, so I get to keep my hand-eye coordination in check. So, the little Renault Megane is very cool. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, and last question: if money were no object, what car would you own?
Wow, so many. I think,
tricky one for a car, guys.
Oh, it is, because there is a lot. But, I think with a name like Marcello, I think I need to have an Italian car. So I'd probably have to go with some older Ferrari or something like that. A modern classic like an F40 would be, I've heard stories about how crazy they are to drive in terms of they're just raw and ready and real driver's car. So maybe an F40, John.
Lovely.
Thank you, mate.
Not a bad choice.
Yeah,
not a bad choice.
Thank you.
Marcello, thank you so much for your time today, and really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll talk again on other issues around the automotive industry and particularly about training. So thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks, John. See ya.
Cheers. Bye.